Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrell, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Workology's learning platform for HR certification, recertification, and now manager training. These are all courses that we offer for certification, recertification, and online learning. Learn more at workology.com/shop. In this episode, we're talking about employee performance, specifically setting performance expectations, which is a lot like giving your team a GPS for success. Without it, they're just wandering around hoping they end up in the right place. And for HR professionals, it's more than a checklist item. It's the foundation for trust, accountability, and growth. When you're crystal clear on what good looks like, you can reduce misunderstandings, tackle problems before they snowball, and give people the confidence to own their work. Plus, it makes those performance conversations way less awkward because everyone's been reading from the same playbook, and that's happening from day one. So how do we nail this? And how can we make it easier for our workforce? That's why I invited our guest today to join us for this podcast episode. Now, before I introduce our guest, I do want to hear from you. You can comment the word podcast on our pinned post over on Instagram at Workology Blog. Ask questions, leave comments, and make suggestions for future guests. Slide into my DMs. I do want to hear from you. So today's guest is Kelley, SPHR, SHRM SCP, founder and CEO of Clinical HR. Kara brings a wealth of experience in cultivating leadership and navigating sensitive employee relations matters to our podcast. Leading a firm that specializes in strategic HR advisory for the dental and medical practices, she empowers healthcare leaders to build high-performing teams through clear expectations and accountability and strong managerial competencies. Kara is passionate about helping practice leaders develop leadership skills that inspire engagement and results-focused performance. I'm so excited to welcome Kara. She provides a keen eye for proactively addressing things like employee relations issues and has been featured on several HR-themed podcasts, including our own, discussing real-world workplace dynamics, including performance management, productivity traps, and pay transparency, as well as establishing professional boundaries. Her expertise in resolving conflict, setting fair expectations, and fostering a positive culture makes Kara the ideal guest to guide listeners through strategies for aligning individual performance goals with organizational success. I'm so excited to welcome Kara back to the Workology Podcast. Welcome, Kara. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Jess. I'm honored to be here. It's always a great time chatting with you, but always honored to be a guest here.
I know. We should just make a podcast of the before talk before we actually hit record. It would probably be more entertaining. Well, we are talking about performance, setting performance expectations in our conversation today. And I know it's something that many leaders struggle with. Communication is so important. And the only way that we can address performance issues, wherever it is on the spectrum, is through communication. And not only is it communication, but it's that accountability piece. Mm-hmm. How do you suggest that managers do this?
Well, as an HR professional, always in writing is one of my number one. However, when I'm coaching a newer leader, I actually tend to lead with what I call my HR ETA. My very first mentor, when I was in a completely different field, was a long-term manager of several tech companies, and he was working with the government entity at that time. And one of the very first lessons he ever taught me is that the 3 pillars of management, that he called them at the time, were to make your expectations clear, give them the tools to do the job, and hold them accountable. And you have to have all 3, otherwise your system crumbles. And so that's my HR ETA. Expectations being the E, T is your tools, time, and training, and then A is still your accountability. But with that expectation, that very key first piece, the one that gets missed so often, we're ready to hold somebody accountable, but we've not actually made the expectations clear. And it becomes very, very difficult to have that conversation at that point. I always feel like as soon as you possibly can, upfront, in writing if possible, but to make sure that you're leading off with things like your job descriptions, like your employee handbooks, like any other written policies that you might have, your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, anything that you have that you really want them to do, whether that's a rule you want them to follow, whether it's a process you want them to follow, whatever the case may be, you need to have that verbally communicated, video communicated, in writing. Different people absorb information different ways. And so the more ways you can have it available, more readily available you can have it, the easier it is for them to get that expectation communicated.
So over communication, but at least some communication, like, and probably many ways.
In many ways, because people learn different ways. I mean, look at how our learning has changed. My goodness, even those of us that are old millennials now, look at how addicted we've gotten to TikTok reels and 90-second this and that. It's like we don't sit and read a 400-page manual anymore. We get our information in bite-sized chunks. Look at the way that you've created your learning platforms, right? For certification study, it's bite-sized chunks. It's not here's your 300-page book. And I have leaders that still rely on that. I had one I talked to last year that was ready to fire someone they had hired 30 days ago, and they said they're just not cutting it. I'm like, well, what have we done? Have we provided any training? Have we set any expectations? She's like, well, we gave them the binder. I'm like, what do you mean the binder? Well, we have this binder with like 400 pages of all of the SOPs and all the things we're supposed to do. And I'm like, oh my, first of all, 30 days is a little too short. And second, they may not learn from the binder. You handing them the binder is not you communicating all your expectations in a clear manner. It's not really providing training. It's just handing it off. And when people don't learn that way, because our attention spans have shortened, or people sometimes or in general just don't learn by reading, they learn by doing or by watching or whatever have you, or verbally, then that's not going to help them, even if it's been communicated in that one way. So yes, over communication. And then to me, as many different formats as you can possibly communicate something in realistically, I think you're going to have a better chance of that landing, especially if you're managing a larger team, a larger company.
This is really a sticking point for me, because I feel like failure to modify how you teach others to learn and just hand that binder over is actually a failure of leadership. And I know that managers, leaders don't want to hear that, but when you continue to do the same thing over and over again, right? That's a form of insanity. I think that's like something that people say. So why are we continuing to train our people over and over and over the same old way, not looking inward and saying, hey, what could I do differently to keep these 8 people over the last 6 months that have walked out the door? Is it me? Why don't managers think this way?
Because that's the way that's always been done. It's the easiest way because it's already created. Them having to go and create a Loom video to show them something, in 30 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever it is actual work.
I call lazy. And I'll say it, but I would say it in a nice way in a setting. I would redirect and say, have you considered maybe trying an alternative to learning or understanding, like a different way to learn? The nice thing is with all this technology, AI, video editing tools, Loom, which you mentioned, it is so easy if you take the time to learn. And please don't be like my mom and call me because she wants me to reset her password and she's texting me to do so. Like we have to learn to do the things, especially if we want to continue working and supporting our people.
Yes, and devil's advocate, the other side that I will hear is that, well, if they're not willing to read a 2-page SOP, a job description, a job posting, or whatever have you, if they're not willing to read and follow directions, and they're just not somebody I want on my team. Okay.
Fair.
If that's a hill you want to die on.
Fair. If you want to calculate the cost of turnover and employee dissatisfaction because this position cannot be filled, like let's take a look at those numbers and it feels more real. And then you can, like you said, make sure it's the hill that you want to die on.
And in fairness, there are some jobs that are very detail oriented that you do need people who really do follow those instructions and can pay attention to details. I've come from accounting worlds originally in corporate. And so that's one of those that, we do need them to actually read the entire sheet of paper and read the client's documentation. I mean, we're in HR. We do need people in HR who are very detail oriented that read the whole email. read the 20-page open enrollment packet, which is going to be kind of interesting going forward. I wonder when we're going to start communicating that in emojis and TikTok videos.
That would be fun. Let's
right?
start a business.
Open enrollment, Gen Z style.
And Gen Z style. Let's talk about the role leadership skills play in preventing misunderstandings or employee relation issues around performance, maybe more directly. I feel like we're kind of beating around the bush, but let's just talk about leadership skills and how they can help prevent this turnover, misunderstanding, conflict in the workplace, performance, all the things.
So one of the top leadership skills that I'm seeing, I know we've heard in the past that it's been empathy, and I'm sure that's true. Adaptability to me is one of the top leadership skill that I feel like we need to acquire, that we need to focus on learning, focus on becoming, and focus on modeling for our teams. Because as we are in this world of change, which is at an exponentially faster rate than it ever has occurred in the history of time, literally since the invention of the wheel, we are changing so quickly that if you don't have the ability to adapt as a leader, as well as an individual in the workforce, you're not going to be successful going forward. I feel like that is a number one skill to me that I'm looking at whenever I'm coaching people on how to hire and when I'm coaching leaders on how to lead. And so that adaptability, like you said, we've kind of beat around the bush of like how you adapt to like how people learn, but just adapting as a leader to different communication styles, different personalities, different generations. We have 5, 6 in the workplace now, getting close to it. If we don't have that ability to adapt and to be able to adapt our communication style, adapt the way that we approach situations, adapt our critical thinking, I think that that's going to cause more problems as things change faster.
Absolutely. And you think about the economy, how everything's shifting with things too. Like it could feel really overwhelming. Like we're overstimulated, always feeling like we need to be on. But I feel like scenario planning, that adaptability, and the willing to, modify as needed. And no implementation or rollout is going to be perfect, but we're continuously learning, adjusting, and growing.
Yes. And we're trying to build the plane while it's flying because we're never going to be ahead again. I
tell my team that every day, like we're building it while we're flying it. And that is just the way it is right now.
Yes. One of my favorite business coaches, Mark LeBlanc, has an expression where he says, sketch it out, kick it out, flesh it out, where you come up with the idea, get it out in the world, and then come back and retool. Because if you wait for it to be perfect, you're never going to have it in the world. Something will have changed already. I know you and I both live in speaker world as well as consulting world. And so I know that there have been speakers that have worked on things that by the time they're ready to get it out there and market it, things have already changed completely.
My book does not mention ChatGPT at all. My digital recruiting book, because it was not there.
It wasn't
but I did talk about I have a whole chapter to AI, but what can you do? I mean, you can just go out there and take what you know and repackage it a little bit and move forward.
Well, in ChatGPT, if you look at it, that's old hat now. We've got so many other options at this point that I was actually looking at the demographics of the usage of it over the summer, and it seems like college students are keeping, or high school students are keeping ChatGPT afloat during the school year. That the usage decreases significantly over the summer because it's a lot of students that are using it. But in the workforce, we're using a lot of different types of AI that weren't in existence 12 months ago, 6 months ago, last month in some cases.
So wild. Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller-Merrell, and you are listening to the Workology Podcast, powered by our online learning portal at Workology for HR certification, recertification, and manager training. Today, I'm talking with Kelley about setting employee performance expectations. I want to switch gears and talk about micromanaging because I think this, unfortunately, happens a lot. I hear about it a lot on social media, particularly TikTok, where my people like to share. But I wanted to ask you what you think and are seeing the difference between micromanaging and holding employees accountable to expectations actually is.
Focusing on the results of what you're asking versus the how it's getting done, I think is how you avoid that micromanaging as a leader. If you are literally focused on every little aspect of how this gets done, that to me is micromanaging. It's saying, I don't trust you. Now, obviously, this doesn't account for somebody who's new or in training or on probation because there's been an issue. It obviously is not going to account for somebody who has who's got a safety reason that they need to. There are some groups that I speak to occasionally that have a high level of safety that's required. They're like rural electric co-op organizations. And so they have ways that they do things and they do it for a reason. And when somebody comes in and they say, hey, but we could do it this way. No, we can't. And there's a real reason for it. And we've gone X number of days without any safety incidents and we want to keep that number going up. So we're doing it this way for a reason. That to me is not micromanaging, as long as you're communicating that this is the why we're doing the things. But if it's something that really doesn't need to be managed for every single little step of the way, let's focus on the result. Here is the task. Here's what I expect. Here's when it's due. And whenever they aren't able to meet that, then we can start looking at, okay, well, what went wrong? Why did we not meet this deadline? Why did we not meet this level of quality that we were expecting? That, again, is not micromanaging. That to me is literally managing. It's your job as a leader, right? You're managing the processes of how things get done. You're leading the people, but you're managing the processes. But when you get to that granular level of like every single thing, this needs to be done in X number of seconds. We need to do it exactly this way. This, needs to use this wrench and not that one, even though they're the same one, but this one's blue and that one's green. We want to use the blue one because I don't know why. That
because
level.
I said so.
Because I said that. Because blue is a pretty color, man.
It is. Why. We're both wearing blue today.
That's why. No green shirts or wrenches here. That to me is micromanaging, is whenever you're getting to that level of it. Or if you as a manager are spending more time focused exactly on what every single person is doing versus leading the team as a whole and driving results as a whole, you might be a micromanager. You should probably take a look at some of this internal reflection process there.
Yes, please. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about HR professionals and how maybe we can help coach our managers to deliver tough feedback better without damaging the trust or morale of the organization that we're working so hard to kind of keep together.
Well, in order for them to do that effectively, they have to have the buy-in of the leadership. And if they don't, we're not going to be able to coach effectively if they're able to just run back to the C-suite, or the C-suite gives a completely different directive versus how we are. So we do want to get that alignment with leadership first. I know that that's something we talk about when we're doing our senior certifications, is aligning with the C-suite, aligning with the board or whomever's in control. And that's that difference between that strategic HR, that partnership of HR versus more tactical HR, is that we think that way. And I think everybody should be thinking that way, regardless of what your role is in HR, is that how do we do this in a way that aligns with what the culture is, aligns with what the mission, vision, values of the organization are. And that in turn, exactly what you were saying, helps continue to build that trust that we're doing this for the better of the organization as a whole, because if the organization is successful, then theoretically we should all be successful within it. I think we can get that buy-in from the top as well as from the people that we're coaching, because we're doing this for a higher vision, a higher mission here. We're not doing this just because we said so, or sometimes we get a bad rap as HR professionals is we're doing this for compliance reasons, right? That we are a shill for DOL and the IRS and all of the alphabet soup of organizations that we have to follow, and laws and acts and such that we have to follow. As much as we all love to nerd out on those things, managers don't want to hear that. So if we're doing it from that perspective of really, we're truly trying to help elevate us as a whole, our team as a whole, our organization as a whole, I feel like we're going to have more success with that. I also feel like just like I was mentioning about, leadership and communication, all of that applies to HR as well. We may not be the direct supervisor or the, direct up the chain of whoever we're coaching, but we do have some positioning as leadership, or we're looked up to in a lot of organizations that do HR well. We're looked up to. If you're in an organization that doesn't, my deepest apologies. Best of luck to you. Hopefully you can still maintain this mentality before you burn out and get jaded. And I feel like we should have those same diplomatic approach to conversations with the leaders that we're leading, and be that example to show them this is how we should do these things. That's what I do as a consultant. I know that's what you do as a consultant and as a coach, by embodying the types of traits that we're trying to coach them on. The number of times they get people that are like, hang on a second, can you repeat that? I want to record you saying it. Like the how you say it, the what you're saying, I'm taking notes. I want to write this down, because when I coach them, I'm showing them what I mean, not just saying, well, you should say this. That's why oftentimes I like to get them on the phone instead of in an email, because tone doesn't convey an email. I really think that we can be that example and show them what good leadership looks like in HR, regardless of what position you're in HR.
I really feel like modeling is really powerful. in our position. And if I could offer advice to any HR professional, I would say coaching and trust building and all those things, getting some skills or training. You don't have to go through an ISC program. There's a lot of good tools. Read books, listen to podcasts, whatever it is. But those are essential for us to be able to influence those leaders, whether it's frontline managers or the executive.
And not just the information in them, being able to provide those as a tool and a resource to those managers and even to the people on their team. I recently helped build out a course with a friend of mine on moving from tactical to strategic thinking and communication. And we were really focused on doing that. It wasn't just about leveling up the people that were in our course. It was, how do we give them tools that they can take back to their team and level up their team as well and get their team to move from tactical to strategic thinking.
Yeah. And everything we should be doing is thinking like at the back of our heads, like applying this for ourselves, and then how that I can use this to help others. I mean, I even think about it for my kid or my partner.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I just did that post, actually. My daughter called me from after work and said she had this issue and she needed to address something with her manager and she wanted help with that. And I was like, oh, yes.
It's finally happening. Well, there'll be a lot more of those, I think, as our kids grow and mature into adults.
Yes. And note, I did not call the manager. I did not even suggest that I call the manager.
I would have
HR people
to.
out there.
Yeah, really much. I know we do. We do. Good. I think that's really, that is the key. My kiddo had to stop me the other day because first week of school, we had a call with the teacher and she was talking and then I came in and then I didn't stop. She said to me afterwards, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Noted. And I will do better."
We're working on it, right?
We are. We are all in progress. How can leaders use performance expectations as a tool to cultivate future leadership within their teams?
I think that we can lead at every level. I know that that's kind of maybe a cliche phrase to say, but I feel like that's something, if we set that expectation that we do want our people to think and act as leaders, even if they don't have necessarily the authority to, we want them to think like leadership. And so by making that clear that first of all is the expectation, and then again, showing them how do we think like this as a leader? And sometimes that is you explaining the why behind your process. I know sometimes we like to say it's because I'm the boss and I said so. That didn't work with parenting and it doesn't really work well in leadership, but best of luck to you. That's one of the things that I do. I said, this is why we're thinking this way. And it's something that's ultimately my decision. It may be something that I'm not asking for any input on, but this is why I made this decision because of XYZ, because the client said this, because my assistant said that, or because my team member is doing these things. I like to communicate those things. And like you said earlier, over communicate. I like that phrase. Whenever it comes to setting those expectations of leadership. I include that on job descriptions in some cases that, even if they're not specifically in a supervisory role, that they should act as leadership or be in alignment with leadership or focus on, does what I'm doing or the process that I'm doing align with what the expectation is as leadership.
I think that's great because it helps move people from that individual contributor mindset to that leader mindset, which is going to help them in the future when you promote them in the organization. They're kind of in that frame, which is going to help everybody. That's, I think, the biggest challenge is that movement space. How do you move to where you're leading a team and influencing people and setting expectations, delegating, when before you're just the person who built the widgets and met your daily, performance goals.
And moving up doesn't always have to be a traditional up the corporate ladder. I work with, like I said, healthcare. And so it's a lot of smaller organizations, or it's organizations where the structure is maybe something clinical that you have to be certified for. A dental hygienist can't wake up today and decide that they're going to go play dentist today, right? They have to actually go back to school for that. They can decide to do that, but it's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and several years of time and a lot of stress and tears. So they can, but it's not going to happen today. And so what can you do to maybe work them toward a goal where they feel like they are growing professionally? Is there something that they enjoy doing, something that they would feel rewarded by being able to do something outside of their role? I know in corporate, we may call that job sharing. in the smaller worlds, we wear a lot of hats as it is, but what hats do we actually want to be wearing? And is there some way that you can help develop that person in a non-traditional way, especially nowadays as the world of work changes so drastically? What are some things that you could do to get them additional skills that still benefit the organization, but that make them feel like they're making progress in their career, even if it's not a specific title change or a jump to a different place in leadership? Small organizations don't have that. Flat organizations don't have that. There's a lot of reasons why people can't just, decide I'm going to be a manager in 3 years. But maybe they love marketing, and maybe that's something you could task them with and get them some additional tools and training on. And they could do other things in their role that still benefits the organization.
I think for a lot of us, that's how we might have ended up in HR.
Yeah, I think that is a lot of us in HR. Some of us fell into it through school. That was me. But I have seen a lot of HR people, and just, I have a HR consultants mastermind group with like 3,300 entrepreneurial HR professionals in it. And there are a number of individuals there that landed in HR because they were an office manager somewhere, or somebody thought that they'd be great in this role, or they just needed a warm body to fill the seat. But they found that they loved it and they thrived because they were given that opportunity through one or another.
Think about that for your people. How can you help them grow and evolve into new places and spaces? Well, Kara, as always, so lovely to talk with you. I always learn so much. Where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
So the work that I do with other HR professionals is generally through HR Consultants Mastermind on Facebook, which you should be able to search the group and get admission to that group if you are looking toward possibly being a consultant at some point. One of those things that you could do to grow professionally. We're a great community for that. You're also welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. Email Kara, Kara, at clinicalhr.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for our conversation today with Kara Kelley on setting employee performance expectations. I hope that you're walking away with practical tools to not only set the bar, but also inspire your team to reach it and maybe even raise the bar for themselves. Remember, clarity isn't just kindness. It's a leadership superpower. So if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the Workology Podcast so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep leading with intention, communicating with clarity, and building workplaces where everyone knows exactly how to shine. And most importantly, thank you for joining the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Workology's online learning portal for HR certification, recertification, and manager training and development. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who is tired of the status quo. My name is Jessica Miller-Merrell. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes.